Hey guys, and welcome to another video. My name is Adrian and today we're going to be reviewing the Canon R6. Now I've owned the Canon R6 for about 4 months now and I absolutely have loved this camera. There is a lot of things I want to say that I dislike about it, but for the majority of things I've absolutely adored it. Coming from the Canon R, I've always loved the R system ever since the R came out. But the thing is, with the R I found a lot of limitations, especially when shooting 4K with the 1.8 times crop. It was killing me, but the photos were great. However, the shadows always gave me issues when it came to video. Being a hybrid shooter, I was looking for the next step up, and the Canon R6 definitely delivered. Now, as I said, I've owned this camera for 4 months, and in that 4 months, I've done a range of different work. I've done weddings, I've shot for corporate clients, music videos, portraits, all different sorts, and I've never had any issues. And for the most part, it's been an absolute breeze. Now you might be wondering, is 20 megapixels enough for a camera? It depends. It's hard to answer. It really depends. Are you someone that prints? And even if you are, you could get away with A2 prints like a breeze, even A1 if you wanted to. If you're looking for bigger prints than that, perhaps the R6 isn't the best choice for you. Now, in all those clients that I've done, I've never really experienced any real long-term issues with the R6, especially when it comes to overheating. Now, I will come back to it, but I've only had one time where the signal showed up that the overheating sign, and that was during a wedding, during the first dance. But again, I'll come back to that a little bit later. Now, yes, I did say landscape photography. Is 20 megapixels enough? Well, it really depends. Are you guys printing A1s, A0s, or even bigger? In that case, perhaps this is not the right camera for you. But for me personally, posting mostly on social media and stuff like that, the R6 is a phenomenal camera. And for its price range, you can't really go wrong. Is the R a great option? Well, if you're just primarily a photographer and you do just a little bit of video on the side, I would recommend the R. But if you have the budget, the R6 is definitely a big step up, guys, and I highly recommend it. Now, I want to talk a little bit more on the videography side, because I am a hybrid shooter, so I do both photography and videography. And now I definitely really want to emphasize on the videography side that I absolutely love its capabilities for video. 4K 60, 1080, you have 120p. It's really nice. Let's start off with the 4K 60. The 4K 60 is downsampled from a 5.1K sensor, so you're actually getting sharper images than a regular 4K image. Now I will say there is a slight crop. I believe it's a 1.1 times crop. Barely noticeable. You can still consider it full frame. Definitely not the 1.8 on the Canon EOS R. The videography obviously does have its limitations, some pros and cons, which I'll talk about now. One of them, unfortunately, which saddens me still to now, is that the Canon still continues to have the 29.99 minute limit, the 0.59 limit. So 30-minute limit, and then it cuts out. Canon, you really need to remove this. We're past that age now. Come on, please, please, please. It is so close to a near perfect camera. There are just a few little things that could get away, and oh my goodness, how happy we'll be. That is one thing. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is the overheating. Is the overheating a real thing? It is, but personally for me, I've never personally experienced it. Like I said, there was one time when I was doing a wedding, and this wedding, which is actually funny, was the first time I used the Canon R6 after I bought it, and we came to the final end where it was the first dance, and then I had the overheat signal, but it actually never overheated on me. Now I must give this a little bit of context that I was filming and shooting photos throughout the day. It was a long wedding, 10-hour day, and we were reaching the last hour or so. And I also want to mention, before the dance, I was filming about 15 or 20 minutes of the groom talking about his wife, and obviously that was shot in 4K, and I I'm assuming that was one of the reasons why I also had the overheating signal. But for the most part, besides that, I shoot a lot of short form content. I actually did a short film recently as well. It was within 2 hours, and I never got the overheating signal. What I would do, and what I would recommend if you guys are looking at getting the Canon R6 or the Canon R5, is after several takes and stuff, if you notice that the timer is going down, turn off your camera for about 5-10 minutes, the timer will recharge and you're ready to go again. I personally like to shoot 4K because I want to crop in the image if I want to, but I must say guys, the 1080 is also absolutely beautiful. The 120 is a little bit mushy. It's not to say that it's terrible, but the 1080-25, the 50, it's phenomenal. I can't recommend it enough. Super sharp like the Canon R, and I really love it. It's got a good bitrate for the 4K and the 1080. So guys, I highly recommend it. You're not going to make a mistake in that regard. Now let's talk a little bit about All Eye versus IPB and how the Canon EOS R6 only has IPB. Now on the original Canon R, I always used to shoot All Eye. All Eye is a great option. It reads and scales the images better than IPB. It's an easier codec and it's more manageable and has a higher bit rate. However, on the R6, for whatever reason, Canon hasn't implemented that in. Maybe in a future update there will be, but right now, as of now, there isn't. Is it a big deal for me? For me personally, absolutely not. I thought it would be originally, and I was kind of shying away from the Canon R6, if I'm being honest, because that feature wasn't in there. But in all honesty, I've been shooting on IPB ever since, and in all honesty, guys, you will not be able to tell a difference. Realistically, you will not see a difference. Your clients won't see a difference, you won't see a difference. The only time you might see a slight difference is when it comes to editing. But you got to remember as well, on the R6, you have H.265 files. That's if you're shooting on log settings. If you're not shooting log and just on the standard profiles, it automatically will take you to H.264 8-bit files. Unfortunately, we don't get 10-bit files codecs for the standard profiles if you're not shooting log. I don't know why that's the reason, but that's how it is. Not to say that the 8-bit isn't beautiful. I actually shoot on 8-bit quite a lot when I'm doing talking heads, and if I have to do a fast turnaround for clients, and the images are still phenomenal. That's not to say that 10-bit, if I could, I would prefer it definitely. But IPB, guys, is fantastic. I've been using it. They gave the new firmware update with the 1.3.1, which was the IPB Light, and in all honesty, I've been using that more so than the original IPB because I love that the file sizes are literally half of the IPB file size, because as you know, they can get quite big. And if you're traveling on the road, whatever that it might be, and you have limited space, IPB Light is a great option. The bitrate does go a little bit down, but in all honesty, if you compare it side by side, you will not be able to tell the difference. You just won't be able to, guys. It's that good. So I highly recommend it if you guys are limited on space, don't have room, or you need to quickly shoot a lot of content and you don't have time to transfer. IPB Light is definitely recommended, and IPB in general has been working fantastic. Now I want to touch base on just a little bit on the H.265 files. So with the new codec now, H.265 is a better codec, definitely. It's existed for a long time, but it's only starting to come into cameras a lot more now, more recently. H.265 obviously retains the quality of the video files, but in a more compressed file, so they're smaller sizes, but keeps the great quality. The only problem with H.265 is a lot of computers cannot run it. I have a pretty specced out computer, a Windows 10 with a GTX 1080, and even I struggle. For the most part, what you're going to have to do is, if you own the R6 or the R5 and you're planning on shooting 10-bit 422, you will have to create proxies, or you're going to have to look at transcoding, or getting yourself a monitor like the Ninja 5 and shooting in ProRes HQ or ProRes, whatever you want, in order for you to avoid creating proxies, because obviously it creates another process where it takes a lot more time, and you have to wait for it to render and everything like that. So what I generally do when I'm doing talking heads, or I've got a fast turnaround, I generally shoot an 8-bit, which is still H.264 files, and they play perfectly quickly on my computer. So you do have that option as well if you want to go down that route. Now I want to touch on something that I'm really excited about, the Canon CLOG3. Guys, it's official, it's finally happened. 1.4 firmware update on the Canon R6 and the 1DX Mark III now have CLOG3. Do I recommend it? Absolutely, guys. Whether you like shooting log or not, it's a great thing to have. I personally, look, let me talk really briefly on C-Log and the standard profile and a little bit about the differences, so it gives you guys a better understanding of the profiles and what might be best for you guys, especially if you guys are beginners or intermediate, and even for maybe the more pro level, what I use it for, and let me give you a little bit of that. So, right now, I've been actually testing the standard profile, the 8-bit standard profile on the Canon R6, and personally, for myself, I absolutely love it. I think the colors look great right off the camera, and if I need a quick turnaround without a heavy grade, I absolutely going to use it. I'm still using it now, and I personally love it. For log, I think log has its place as well. Log, C-Log the original, and C-Log 1, and then CLOG3, which gives an extra dynamic range. I think it's 12 stops of dynamic range, while the C-Log is kind of limited to 11. It obviously retains much better detail in the highlights, and it's a little bit better in the shadows, while C-Log always kind of struggled a little bit more in the shadows and wasn't really great in the highlights. It quickly clipped on the highlights. C-Log, I find, has a better place when it comes to more serious work. If you're doing short films, feature films, documentaries, where you need that kind of extra latitude of color grading, so that you have more depth and you can create those visuals that you want to more in depth. I think they work great. But for simple talking head videos, YouTube, stuff like that, that's going to go on YouTube and going to get compressed anyway, I personally would recommend sticking with the standard profile, because my kind of mantra now when it comes to storytelling and video and photography for that matter is that story will always trump cinematics. That's something I'm only starting to grasp a lot more now, and I'm starting to apply more than ever. Focus on the story, guys. Focus on your story. Focus on the message you're trying to convey, and then worry about the color grading. Don't be too focused on the color grading. Don't be too focused on the cinematics. Create the best work that you can, but focus more on the story. What's your message? What are you trying to convey? Who are you trying to inspire? What are you trying to do, right? What is it that you want to say to the audience? Focus on that. A great example of this is Casey Neistat. If you look at his cameras, what he was using, point and shoots, phones, everything like that, you didn't really watch him because he had cinematic footage. In fact, it was quite the opposite, but his storytelling was always so engaging. I loved it. I always wanted to watch him. I didn't realize what it was at the time because I didn't understand. His audio wasn't great. His cinematics weren't that fantastic. It was very shaky, all over the place. I hadn't seen something like this before. But he pioneered vlogging. He created a mood. He wanted you to engage with him. He brought you into his life through his messages, through his storytelling, through the way he visualized it, through those shaky footage, through those terrible color gradings. He made you really love him and appreciate him because he was real. He was genuine. He was authentic. He wasn't trying to sell you on visuals alone. He was trying to sell you himself, right? And that's what you got to do. Sell your brand, who you are as a person. So personally, for me, I really recommend the Canon R6 on the standard profile. I think it's phenomenal. Standard and the neutral grade as well. But the C-Log also has its place. But it depends if you want to spend a little bit more time grading, which I personally enjoy. But if you're in a hurry and you got to get the videos out, or if you're like Casey at the time that was vlogging every day, daily, you don't really have time to do that, right? Especially if you're on your own. So shooting on the standard profile is just simpler. It makes it smoother. It's 8-bit files, so you're not going to worry about creating proxies and all that stuff, and you're ready to roll. So definitely check it out. Let's talk about now the battery life. The battery life with the LP-E6 HN, I believe it's called, the new battery, gives it like about 10% extra battery, I think it is. They're phenomenal. They're really great. And I still have my old batteries from my Canon R. They work great. I get about 2 hours of battery life in general, and that's more than enough for me. And that's like when I'm shooting in 4K. When it comes to photos, I generally find 1 to 2 batteries last me all day with ease. So the batteries are fantastic, guys. You don't really need the latest batteries that come with the camera, the E6HN, I think it is, the NH. You don't need them. You honestly don't need them. They're very expensive. You can get cheaper batteries, and that's what I would personally recommend. If you got original, genuine Canon batteries from the R, keep them. They work great. Now, let's just talk about pricing. So right now, the Canon R6, the cheapest I've been able to find on it for just the body alone is about 3,700 Australian dollars. Is it expensive? Absolutely, it is expensive. But I must say, it is an investment into a very good camera that's going to last you many, many years. I was honestly considering at the time a couple other cameras, and then I happened to get the Canon R6, and honestly guys, I really fell in love with it. I think it's just a near perfect camera. It ticks all my boxes as a hybrid shooter. It's honestly fantastic. It's the perfect weight. It's not very heavy. With the setup, with the 24-70, it's under 2 kilos, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's under 2 kilos. It's been fantastic and phenomenal. I actually want to touch up very quickly as well on the SD cards. Now, I'm currently using an Angelbird 256 V60 card, and the V60 is able to record the 4K 60 max setting on this with ease. It's never failed on me, never given me an issue. You don't have to worry, because once you start going to the R5, you're gonna have to start getting faster cards. You need CF Express, you need V90s. With this one, guys, V60 will be more than enough, which I absolutely love, because they are expensive cards. I haven't tested the V30 personally myself. Maybe the V30 would work for 4K 25p, but don't quote me on that, because I cannot confirm that, as I don't have a V30 card. But for 1080, if you're recording 1080 in general, you're fine with a much cheaper card. Not an issue at all. SanDisk 80 megabits per second, 80 megabits per second, sorry, will record unlimited 1080 with ease. Alright, RF lenses, guys, we have to talk about them. I'm currently shooting this on the 24-70 RF 2.8 lens. It's honestly, guys, my favorite lens of all time. I've used the 28-70 f2 RF. I absolutely didn't like it. I absolutely couldn't stand it. The reason I love this lens so much is for several reasons, guys, and that I chose this over the 28-70. One, the IS, image stabilization, is fantastic, guys. The fact that it comes with the R6 and the lens is phenomenal. You get 8 stops of image stabilization, and it's one of the best image stabilized cameras that I've ever used. It's fantastic, guys. You almost don't even need a gimbal for the most part. It's really that good. RF lenses are unfortunately very expensive. Like this lens over here almost costs pretty much as the camera body itself, but it really does live on this camera more than any other of my lenses. Would I recommend RF lenses, or would I stick to EF? It really depends on your budget. EF lenses are still great. I use the 16-35 f4. It's also image stabilized. I have the adapter, and it works fantastic as well. I have no issues. And the autofocus, in all honesty, works exactly the same. The adapter is phenomenal. Just a cheap Canon adapter that you get, not with the filters or anything, just the general one. It's fantastic. It still autofocuses like a native lens, and I highly recommend it, guys. I chose this one as well because the motor in it, the autofocus motor, you cannot hear. It is silent as butter. It's just quiet. You cannot hear nothing. On the 28-70, which I was really surprised, being kind of trophied as the king of the lenses, you could actually hear the autofocus crackling. And for me, honestly, that was a bit of a deal breaker. I've gotten so used to this and so spoiled how quiet the 24-70 is I won't go to the 28-70. And the other thing was weight. Weight is a big deal for me. I want to be able to run and gun. I want to be able to get in and get out quickly. With a 28-70 f2, it's so hefty, it's so big, that you're constantly seen everywhere you go. You cannot hide it. And it was just too heavy, and it's too front loaded for me, so I didn't want to look into it at all. So that's pretty much it. Now, my final thoughts on the Canon R6. Do I recommend it? I absolutely recommend it, guys. I would give it a 9.5 out of 10, easy. Honestly, the only thing that's stopping it from a 10 out of 10 is just that record limit, the overheating, unfortunately, the artificial timer, or whatever's going on there, something's going on. I really wish that wasn't there, but if it wasn't for that, guys, in all honesty, I highly recommend the R6. I personally think it's one of the best cameras of 2021, and I can't recommend that enough. 2020 and 2021, and honestly, I'm planning on using this camera for years to come. Yes, there might be a chance where I might change, I might upgrade. There's the R3 and everything looking right now, but in all honesty, as they say, if it's not broken, you don't have to fix it, right? And that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, if you found some information, please leave it a like, please subscribe. It really helps me, it helps my channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Stay safe, be well, and I'll catch you guys soon. See ya.